Morning, folks. We're here in the Snowy Range in southern Wyoming. We're getting into the heart of hunting season, so that's why I've got the orange hat on, but we are going fishing today. I've got my fancy pants on, so hopefully I'll stay warm and dry. But anyway, where we're headed is to the Medicine Bow River, and we got to hike through those woods for a quarter mile or so to get to the river. Hopefully it'll be a good day. We'll get some good ones. I'm looking forward to tangling with some brookies today. So, see you down at the river. Hello, fishing friends. Welcome to the Medicine Bow River. It's certainly a resplendent place. My goal today is to try to catch some brookies. I've got my 3-weight with me. You might be able to see there's still a little bit of snow on the ground from a snow earlier this week. Well, I don't think the fish will mind. The water's come up a little bit from some of the melt based on how it was about 2 weeks ago. So that might help me a little bit. When the water's that low, these fish are super spooky. So anyway, hopefully that'll help me out. I'm going to start with dries. Hopefully that'll work. If not, I'll move on to something a little wetter. Anyway, other than fishing today, we're also going to do a segment on bush cooking. I'll try to do one of those in every one of the episodes. Today's is going to be real simple, just a bushman's tea. And then I actually got some really good footage of some moose earlier, so I'm going to tag that on maybe to the end of the video. After the credits, if you want to see that, I saw a herd of about 3 young bulls that were just doing their thing, and they had a cow with them with a calf, and they were kind of very casually fighting over her. It was really cool. So anyway, wish me luck. I got a good feeling about the river today. It's cold outside, but the sun is going to be shining, and the water level is great. It's perfectly wadeable, but not too low. I think we're in for some really good fishing today. At the very least, we're in for some great scenery. So, let's get fishing. Hey folks, well, first catch of the day. Beautiful little guy. Look at that. Absolutely gorgeous. The dry fly wasn't working for me. I couldn't see it in this current. So I switched over to a little prince nymph, and second or third cast, boom. Oop. Well, he's off for a swim. Have a little sulk under a rock, no doubt. But anyway, that's the kind of fish I catch around here, is those about like that size, you know? About like that. They got a lot of heart. Obviously, they're not very big, but it's all about the setting. Catching fish in a beautiful, lonely place like this. You just can't beat it. Hey folks, sorry for the terrible audio. My camcorder got too cold, and it's got the good microphone on it, so I got it in my shirt trying to warm up. I missed a few good shots of some fish to share with you too, but that's alright. We caught a few, got a few on camera. It's cold. Yeah, so I'm taking a break to warm up. Thinking about making myself a little bit of tea, and man, my fingers are starting to regain feeling. I'm not sure if I like it, but that's what it's all about, getting to these lonely places, having a good time, letting nature affect you to some degree, you know? We're not insulated completely from it. When we're out here, we're part of it, we're participating in it, and so we get cold, we get a little wet, whatever, but that's part of the experience. And I'll say this, when you have those moments where you're kind of miserable, just remember that misery is momentary, but the memory of that adventure is for the rest of your life. So a little bit of misery for a great memory, totally worth it. All right, folks, I'm gonna make myself a little woodsman's tea, and to do that I'm gonna harvest some wood first to make a fire. And I've got a hatchet on me and the little micro bow saw that we're working on at Lonely Places. This one's just kind of a test piece, but it folds up to almost nothing. It's pretty convenient, so it may be something we bring into production. I experiment with a lot of things that never go anywhere, but that's why we're out here, among other reasons, is to test stuff and see if it's worth making for you guys. So anyway, I'm gonna start harvesting some wood so we can have us a little fire and make some tea. Okie doke. Okay, the first and one of two only necessary ingredients for our bushman's tea is pine needles. The other thing we need is water. Doesn't get much easier than that. So I think there's a few ways people do this, but the easiest for me is I just take something that you can pound with, whatever, and kind of masticate these things. Just break them up, and as you do that, you'll see that they actually get real shiny, and the sap starts to come out of the leaves. You can chop them up too, but I find this to be easier because then I can just break them off the twig and throw them into the water while I'm cooking it. Real simple. I'm not breaking any new ground here, by the way. I'm not pretending that what we're doing here is novel and that other people have not done it a million times. But that's what makes it so great. It's proven. And apparently it's quite rich in vitamin C. So how about that? It does usually have a pretty citrusy flavor to it. Smells delish. So that's that. That's all broken up. Just set that aside. And we'll need to put a little water in our pot. That'll do us. Then I just take all these things that shoot up, all these things, these needles, and drop them in here. Try to break them off the fascicle so you don't put the fascicle in there. The fascicle being the base of the needle where they attach together. That part's kind of woody and meh. I just try not to put it in there. But I don't know if it makes a big difference, really. Throw in some needles. Sure makes your hands smell good. I should be smart about this. This is a really sharp hatchet. Should be able to just, slice them off. That's why we bring our tools into the woods, because it makes it easy. Alright, that's enough. Doesn't take much. Now we need a fire. So while this is steeping, just wanted to take a moment to discuss this kind of fire. It's a little bitty fire with little sticks. The point of it is to quickly, relatively quickly, at nature's pace, brew us up a nice little tea. And it doesn't have to be a big production because it's not a lot of water we're trying to heat up. A big fire, you know, you're going to have to find some standing dead wood and split it, or cut it to length and then split it to get into that interior dry wood, most likely, depending on conditions. Little fire like this, mostly it's just little sticks I gathered. I cross-cut a few pieces of about 3-inch wood and split those. That only took a couple minutes. And the purpose of that is just to give it what I call the beating heart. Every fire, you know you've gotten it to that sort of self-sustaining place when it has the beating heart. And that just means that it's got that heat in the center of it that's sustaining it. You keep adding to it, it's fine, it'll keep going. But you can get that on a small scale. And so that's why I add those little pieces of wood. Otherwise, just little sticks, that's all it takes. While we're here, we might as well talk about the plant of the week. And it is Pinus contorta, or lodgepole pine. In some other parts of the country, some other parts of the country it's called shore pine. That's its subspecies, it's very different. But this is lodgepole pine that you find throughout the Rockies. It burns really well because it's fire dependent. The species is basically very flammable, and then it has, grab the hot end of the stick. Don't do that. So the fire dependency, the brilliant thing that the tree does is it wants to burn, because it's really good at being one of the first trees to come back after fire. The cones just sit waiting for fire, and then they open up and do their magic. So, what else about our plant of the week? Let's see. It's actually edible. In the spring, you can eat the inner bark. It's apparently kind of sweet. I've not tried it myself, but I've heard that it's okay, especially if you make strips of it and then pan fry it. We will definitely do that in the spring at some point. It's fall right now, and apparently it's not that great, so we won't do that. It grows in very thick, dense stands, potentially anyway. Very, very thick. I mean, you can't even see 100 yards through them. It's just pull, 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 pull. And they'll all be real skinny, straight trees. And that's where it got the name lodgepole pine, because they were great, straight trees for teepees and such. And apparently, it has a really good strength to weight ratio. So it's a light wood that's easy to carry around when you're a nomad. That sort of thing matters, so that's where the name came from. Okay, our tea is coming to a boil now, so I'm not going to add anything else to the fire. We'll just let it die down, and I'll let that steep just a little bit longer. I do have one little additional ingredient I like to add. This is a little honey stick. It's just a little plastic straw that's sealed up on both ends, full of honey. It's a really nice addition to this tea. The right time of year, if you're making this tea, you can probably find some natural sweeteners, but there's not much available right now, so I brought this. And that, oh yeah. That is looking good. Alright, let's add our honey in. Give her a stir. I don't bother taking the needles out. You can, of course, but I just found it's more trouble than it's worth. Okay, let's give her a try. It's very refreshing. There's the sweetness of the honey, and then the citrusy flavor of the pine needles, and then just warmth on a cold fall day. That's delightful. I think it's totally worth it if you're out in the woods like this, fishing or hiking, whatever. Take a half-hour break, make a little fire like that, have yourself some tea. Of course, I could have just as easily brought a tea bag, but there's something about using what nature gives us just to immerse ourselves a little more in the experience. So, you do get the odd pine needle in your mouth. You know, it's kind of funny comparing a fire, to an organism with a beating heart, because the chemical equation for metabolism, for respiration, is actually pretty much the same as the equation for combustion. So a fire, in a way, is an organism. And so thinking of it that way, breathing life into it, getting that heart beating, you nurture your fire. You start thinking of it that way rather than this sort of brute force method of lighter fluid and flamethrowers or whatever. You start thinking of it that way, and you can adapt your fire. Your fire can be this small little organism, or it can be a large bonfire, of course, and anything in between. And the more you understand the constituents of the organism, the trees you're using, the wood you're using, the more you can tailor the fire to exactly what you're trying to do. Are you using it to stay warm all night long? Do you need it to burn, slow and long, or do you want a quick little fire to make a nice little cuppa? I'll tell you what, I feel 1,000,000 times better than I did, at least my body, after I got out of that river this morning. I fished from sunup to about 10 o'clock, and all of my extremities were numb. My body was screaming at me, get out of the water. So I did, even though the fish were biting. But now it's probably warmed up to 45, 50 degrees. Got some warm tea in me, sitting by a little fire. Yeah, reflecting on... Fires are good for reflecting, too, You sit around the fire and you ponder. You recollect those memories. It's funny how fire works. When you're sitting around a fire, it's like time doesn't really pass. It almost stores up. It collects in that space. And you kind of stay frozen in that moment, hypnotized by the fire and your thoughts. Well, I've enjoyed my tea. Now, what I didn't drink, I'll just use to put any embers out. Lovely. Okay, as I mentioned, lodgepole pine is a fire-dependent tree, and so it needs fires to go through the ecosystem periodically to help the species as a whole. Obviously, individual trees suffer greatly when they burn. But anyway, here's a young one, and then we're surrounded by this whole, you can see how thick it grows. This whole stand here is, for the most part, lodgepole pine. And a lot of them, I don't know if you can tell in the video, but a lot of them are dead. In this area of the Rocky Mountains especially, there's been an outbreak. It's tapering off now, as I understand it, but it was an outbreak of mountain pine beetle. And the beetle comes in these mass attacks and just kills, millions of trees over the landscape. If you're trying to identify these trees, you can look for these thick stands like this. They grow fairly straight when they're that constricted in space. So you'll see just sticks, just thousands of sticks that'll totally block out your view past probably 100 yards. Another thing to look for is a two-needle pine. So that means that each fascicle has two needles. The way I remember the Latin name for it, Pinus contorta, is that the needles often have a twist to them. Not sure if you can see that or not, but they often do. I think the name came from something else, one of the subspecies that actually grows in a contorted form. Nonetheless, it's helpful to remember with the needles as well. So you got a two-needle pine, grows in these real thick stands, very straight, and that's exactly what you need to look for, and you'll find it. In some landscapes, it absolutely dominates. Unfortunately, it dominated this landscape, and now that a lot of them have died from beetles, this landscape has a lot of dead trees, and it's just waiting. It's a tinderbox. At some point, it'll go up, and these trees will burn. Fortunately, there are some companies that are harvesting these beetle-killed trees and making things like 2x4s out of them. So it's not a total loss. They are useful. So that is Pinus contorta. The lodgepole pine in other areas known by other names, because I think there's 4 subspecies, but lodgepole pine throughout the Rockies. It's all over Wyoming. I think it should be the state tree of Wyoming, honestly. I think the state tree is the cottonwood, but the lodgepole pine, I think, better defines the area. Anyway, I think we should probably do some more fishing. I feel like fishing. Alright, I've changed locations. We're here at a little nothing of a stream, really. And there's just tiny little pockets where these brook trout have kind of hunkered down during this low water for this creek anyway. They are crazy spooky right now, though. You can't get anywhere near them, so I'm gonna have to go full ninja, full fly fishing ninja to get to these fish. Why I moved over here is because I want to do some dry fly fishing. So I've got a little 16 elk hair caddis. It's pretty much my go-to fly for dries. I'm going to see if I can't get one of these spooky little trout out of this tiny stream. Okay, wish me luck. Hey folks, I tried fishing this little creek with a dry fly, little elk hair caddis, and I managed to get one. Other than that, I spooked a bunch of fish. The one I did catch, the fly was going through a real slow area. There's a lot of real slow pools because the water's so low. And I gave it a little twitch and he slammed it right when I did that. So I'll take that that lesson. I guess when it goes through those little still pockets, a little twitch can help. Anyway, I am gonna call it a day. It's been a good one. Been out in some awesome lonely places, going after some fish and just kind of soaking it in. Living the good life. See ya.